If you've been paying attention to real estate news lately, you've probably heard about the real estate commission lawsuits, the guilty verdict that there was. There's some settlements that have been paid out here, and there's also been some more copycat lawsuits. All of these are really challenging real estate commissions. They're having consumers question, why do real estate agents get paid what they do? Why is it structured the way they do? Why do sellers indirectly have to pay for buyer's agents? Do we really even need buyer's agents? It's really calling into question industry practices. So I wanted to take a minute here, just kind of walk you through some of the rationale behind having a buyer's agent, having a listing agent, and then with that information, you can decide whether or not it makes sense for you, whether you're buying, selling, or doing both, if you really need an agent in your corner to help you to achieve your real estate goals. Now, in these lawsuits, buyer agency has been challenged. The commissions that are paid by the listing agent for a buyer agent and their services, meaning the seller indirectly because they pay the listing agent and the listing agent pays the buyer agent. There's been a lot of concern over that. There's been a lot of complaints. That's the nature of a lot of these lawsuits here, that maybe buyer agency isn't necessary. Maybe buyer agents don't need to make as much money as they are. Surely buyers can find their own homes online on Zillow and other sites. So why do we really need buyer's agents? So it's calling in to question the purpose of buyer agency in general. Now, if you look up some of the history here, as of about 30 years ago, we didn't really have buyer agency. It was something where if you wanted to buy a home, it was buyer beware. You can certainly reach out to listing agents individually. You can still do that right now if you don't have an agent. You can call the numbers on different signs. You can look at the different websites, look up their numbers. If you look hard enough on Zillow and other sites, you can figure out who the listing agent is rather than just filling out a contact me form for more information. But you still have that option. 30 years ago, you didn't have the option of having an agent in your corner to represent you as a buyer. The result was that you were actually negotiating or writing an offer on a home with the agent who's actually representing the seller only. So anything that you told the listing agent, whether you realized it or not, was not confidential. They were able to share that information with the seller to the benefit of the seller. So all of the cards are in their hand. It's heavily in their favor in terms of their negotiating power because they know everything about you, but they're not revealing anything that would hurt the seller in your negotiation. So the result is you're on your own. You're not getting any sort of advocacy on your side. In addition to finding a home and then getting it under contract, negotiating those terms and those prices, the advantage of having a buyer's agent in your corner also is to get to the finish line, to ultimately get to the closing. You have to get through the inspection contingency. Hopefully, if you're working with an agent, you've been able to negotiate that into the contract. Even though there might be multiple offers, it's really important, I think, to negotiate to have an inspection done. Whether you're doing a full inspection, you're allowed to ask for repairs, or maybe you're saying that you're going to take it as is, pass or fail. Whatever the terms are of that, I highly recommend that you get an inspection done, even if you think you know what the condition of the property is, even if it's been inspected before it was listed. I think it's best to have a professional inspector who's impartial, who's not representing the seller, who's representing your interest in terms of revealing as much information about the property as possible to make sure you don't make a big mistake. Or if you want to move forward, even knowing the condition of the home, even knowing there's some repairs done, at least you did your due diligence and you know what you're getting into before you go ahead and close the sale. There's also the appraisal. So we have a third-party professional that verifies that the price you're paying for the home is fair, that the home you're purchasing is actually worth that or even more, or else we can't continue with the contract unless we renegotiate the price, or unless you're willing to bring more cash to the table to make up the gap between the purchase price and the lower appraisal. So that's a check and balance in the process as well. If there is a low appraisal, you need your agent to help bridge that gap between those two prices to keep the deal together. And then ultimately, you also have to close the financing. Although you're pre-approved, you have to know what to do each step along the way with your loan officer and with some guidance from your buyer's agent as well. The do's and don'ts of managing your personal finances and your credit, your job, your employment status, making sure you don't make any large purchases or anything that would actually ding your credit, or change your debt to income ratios where you wouldn't be able to ultimately get the loan finally approved just before closing. So there's a lot of steps that need to happen. There's a lot of other things that we won't go into here that can happen throughout the process. Most of those just being disagreements between buyer and seller, where if you're on your own and you've never done this before, or if you're on your own without an agent and you have done it before, but it's been a while, which is what most people are in that situation, you may not know what's customary right now. You may not know some of the best practices to prevent those problems, and also when those problems come up unexpectedly, how to overcome those obstacles to make sure that you can close on the purchase of the home where you ultimately want to live. So there is a lot of stress involved with moving and certainly with buying a home, but the role of that buyer's agent is to alleviate that stress for you as much as possible and ultimately to help you to get to the finish line to move in to the home that you want to purchase. Now, if you're thinking about selling your home and you're wondering whether or not it makes sense to pay a listing agent commission to actually help you get your home sold for the best price and terms, you can certainly weigh your different options. You can do for sale by owner, where you do everything yourself and you market it on Zillow. You wouldn't be getting into the MLS if you did that. If you worked with a limited service agent where they do get you into the MLS, but they let you do or force you to do most of the work yourself, that's another option as well for a lower cost, but more work on your end. And then you've also got options for full service agency, full price, or even a discounted rate as well. We do full service for a flat fee. There's other videos that we've done on a comparison there that I'll link here so you can check that out a little bit later. But the idea is, yes, we want to understand that if we're going to pay a listing agent a commission, we want to make sure that we're actually getting something in exchange for that, and then, in fact, getting more value than we're paying into it. So it's actually a return on investment. It doesn't make sense as a homeowner to pay 3% to a listing agent, for example, or 6% total for a listing agent and a buyer's agent if you're actually going to get less than 6% in return for that. Obviously, as a homeowner, you want to get as much, you want to net the most money as you possibly can, get as much from your sale as you can, and you want to have as little work and as little stress as you possibly can. So it's different for everybody. Some people are willing to do more work on their end. They don't mind spending the time and the effort to do things on their own if that means they're going to save some money. But ultimately, you also have to ask yourself, what are the results going to be? Are you going to get an equal or better result if you don't hire a professional versus if you do it yourself? Do you have expertise in this area? Have you done it more than once? And the last time you did it, was that recently or was that several years ago? Because you have to understand that the best practices that are happening right now in the market for negotiating and also navigating the things that we mentioned here, just like on the other side of the equation, if you're a seller, you're still navigating through the inspection, the appraisal, and the financing of the buyer. You need to make sure you can prevent those problems and fix those problems if they do come up, even if you can't prevent them from happening in the first place. So ultimately, your goal is to net the most money from the sale of your home to have as smooth a process as possible. You want to look at for sale by owner as an option, limited service as an option, and full service as an option. Interview a few different real estate agents to kind of get their different pricing and services that they offer, because contrary to popular belief, not every listing agent offers the same services for the same price. Some of them are pretty drastically different. Yes, many of them are very similar. But I think it makes sense to interview as many agents as you can, even if you don't end up hiring one, so you know what your options are. You can kind of see, what are all the things I'm going to have to do if I do this on my own? What are the things that this agent does that can take that off my plate? How much are they charging for that? Is that worth it? Can they get me a better result than I could do on my own? And so am I going to get a return on my investment if I hire that listing agent? So hopefully walking through the process as a buyer and as a seller, as we just did here, helps you to better understand whether or not it makes sense for you to hire a buyer's agent or to hire a listing agent to help you to buy or sell a home. If you're still struggling with the general concept, if you're still skeptical about real estate commissions and you don't know why agents are paid as much as they are or why they even exist, or maybe you feel like you don't really need one, that's certainly fine. You've always had the choice to not hire a real estate agent. And also you need to understand that commissions are always negotiable. Now, not every agent's going to be completely negotiable. Sometimes their hands are tied because their broker doesn't want to negotiate much. There's always at least a little bit of wiggle room, and some agents are more flexible than others due to their structure and their setup with their brokerage as well. But there's no fixed pricing, there's no conspiracy to inflate real estate commissions, contrary to what's going on with these lawsuits and what they're accusing. You always have negotiable commissions. You always have the option to not hire a real estate agent, whether you're a buyer or a seller, if you don't want their services. But if you think about it from the standpoint of doing your taxes, maybe if you're a W-2 employee, you do your own taxes on TurboTax or some inexpensive service like that. But if you're self-employed or you own a business, you might be more, think it's more reasonable to hire a professional, because maybe your tax situation is more complicated than just, here are my wages and here's what I've already paid. That's pretty easy. But once you start figuring in, is this a deductible expense or not? I don't want to claim too much as a deductible expense. I don't want the IRS to red flag me and audit me, but I also don't want to pay more taxes than I need to. So I certainly fall into that camp. I could do my own taxes if I want to, but I opt to hire a professional, put the liability on them, but also put all the time and energy on their side so I don't have to stress about it. But I'm also trusting that I'm going to get a better result. So in that case, What I'm saying here is if you compare hiring a tax professional to hiring a real estate agent, the expectation when you hire a tax professional to handle your taxes is that you're going to get a better result. So regardless of what you pay them, you're expecting you're actually going to get less of a tax liability by more than what you've actually paid them. You're going to get a return on your investment. So if I pay somebody $2,000 to do my business tax filings, I'm expecting that I'm going to owe more than $2,000 less than I would if I did it on my own. And also I'm going to alleviate some of the stress of wondering whether or not I've made a mistake, if I'm going to get audited or red flagged, and am I going to have to pay some sort of a penalty or get into some sort of legal trouble because I didn't do my taxes right on my own. You can also apply that to other professions as well. Why do you hire a financial advisor instead of just investing in your own mutual funds or individual stocks as you see fit? Ultimately, you're paying that person a fee because you're expecting a better result. That's the bottom line. You pay a professional to guide you with a major decision, whether that's buying a house, selling a house, whether that's doing your taxes, or that's hiring a financial advisor to help you with your retirement savings, making sure those grow so that you have enough, you can plan ahead to have enough when you want to retire to be able to cover your living expenses. Whatever the case may be, you need the help to plan, you need the help to execute that plan from a professional who's done that over and over again with many different people and has been able to give you a return on your investment. And then the byproduct as well, in addition to getting a better result, you're also going to be spending less time and effort and having less stress about whatever you're doing, whether that's buying, selling a home, doing your taxes, or planning for your financial future, because you've hired a professional and you have that peace of mind knowing that it's being taken care of better than you can do on your own. If you have any questions about real estate commissions, how they work, why they are structured that way, the pros and cons of working with a buyer's agent or a listing agent, how to navigate the real estate market, whether you're buying or selling or doing both, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you. The best way to reach out here is to visit our website at 513flatfee.com. Click one of the links there to schedule a call so we can set aside some time dedicated to assessing your needs and helping to map out a game plan for how we can help you specifically to achieve your real estate goals. I'm Patrick Rosser with the 513 Flat Fee Real Estate Group at Fathom Realty.